Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. We've all heard of ESG, environmental, social, and governance. ESG is about making a difference for your business and our world. Now, most companies talk about being as conscious as possible, but what about those corporations that actually do it? Today, I'm joined by Sabine Steinbrecher, founder and Chief Hiveologist at Hiveologie Accelerated Learning. Sabine transformed her business and now leads with purpose for bees. Sabine, welcome to Empowered. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the beginning. What has been your entrepreneurial path so far?
It's been interesting. I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life and have been ed tech entrepreneur for over 25 years. So in essence, that means that I've been on the bleeding edge of ed technology for many, many years. But I've always had a really sort of significant focus on establishing ways in which that I could improve the lives of the people that I touched through the business, through education primarily. So that's been sort of the short version of it. There's been a lot of different versions of that over the years as technology has changed and grown.
Now, your path, you've been a serial entrepreneur. Has your path always included a social mission?
It has. In fact, the more that I developed this concept, the more that I thought about, how it's always been part of everything that I've done since the beginning. And I didn't even realize that that was true, from a variety of things like board work and volunteer work and other things. But honestly, what was really interesting was even 20 years ago, I'd completely forgotten about this, that I had been awarded by Imagine Canada a philanthropy award. And I'd completely forgotten that it had been that large already back then, to be honest. One of the areas that I've always tried to focus on is teaching one customer a year, at least, if not a couple, if we could manage it, that were not for profits, how to use education to generate passive revenue so they would have another revenue stream besides, their usual donation stream. So that's always been part of what we've done. It's always been very close to my heart. And frankly, it's now sort of come together in a new way that's much more significant for me personally.
So that Imagine Award is very important. So you shouldn't forget about it. Actually,
Yeah,
you should include it. You should include it in what you're doing. So
yeah.
let's talk about your profit for a cause philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to. Even from the beginning, the goal was always, how can I teach people to use something to generate more revenue in their not-for-profit? And I always felt like that was a great idea, but in a way a little bit backwards. Like one of the things that I thought would be really fantastic was, how do we have everyone focus on generating profit for a cause instead? So this means that everybody that's generating income in some form or another hopefully has some mission that they're really excited about, that they then can contribute in some way to some mission that they're very passionate about. What we do, as an example, is very simple. Our passion, and where our social mission lies is with bees, with honeybees, as you mentioned. And our goal is 3% off the top of every dollar that comes in the door, we donate to a bee sanctuary, and the first bee sanctuary. There's other things to come, but that's the way that we've applied it. Of course, people can do that in lots of different ways, but that's our current mission anyway.
So, okay, you talked about bees. How did bees become your passion?
It started at a personal level. It was something that was concerning me for a really long time. And then a couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to move to a property that had a lot of space, and we started doing our own hives and getting very excited about it. And at the same time, doing a lot more research and understanding just how much trouble a lot of our pollinators are in and how critical it is to our food source and everything that happens on the planet. So it became right around the same time that we were launching Hiveologie, which was a bit of a fluke, actually, that the two of them came together at the same time. But the Hiveologie concept is this education platform that functions more like a hive, more like a community, more like an ecosystem. And all of those came together at the same time. So this passion for bees that was becoming just stronger and stronger every day became also the social mission for the company. So, and I'm realizing that sort of organic fit is what's really critical for people to try to do themselves. It's so much easier if everything's in alignment.
So I love the fact that you're talking about an organic fit and the profit for cause philosophy, because a lot of people are constantly looking at how much money am I making? What's my revenue? What's this and what's that? And they're not really thinking about giving back to the community, which I believe is super important. So
Mhm.
when we come back, we will discuss more about you and the bees and the environment. Welcome back to Empowered. I am Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're focusing on the profitable cause revolution, transforming businesses to purpose. And I've got Sabine Steinbrecher here. And let's delve in. How can your social mission empower your career, your business, and your life, actually?
I think there's frankly a ton of different ways that this can get exciting for everybody. One of the things to think about is what is the sort of the impact that doing this can make for someone. And I think that is one of the things that, besides the obvious of doing good in the world, there's an awful lot of good that this can do for your business too. One of the things that, people are struggling with all the time are things like, brand loyalty, for instance. What a wonderful way for people to establish brand loyalty by having their customers understand where some of that money is going, where, what your belief system is, what the sort of underlying foundation is for the organization that they're working with. There's some really big stats. In fact, I went and updated my stats just before, I knew we would be talking about this tonight, and I couldn't believe how much higher they've gotten. There's things like, 87% of consumers are more likely to work with a company that they are in alignment with the issue that they care about. Like, that's a big number. We know that number is particularly high with millennials, and I thought that it was primarily in that group, but it's now 87% across the board. That's a big number. Yeah. We know that, for instance, something like 73% of employees want to work for a company that has some alignment to some mission that's important to them too. Obviously, that's great for retention and recruitment strategies, for having some of the best people. It's really quite deep and broad. And there's other areas too. I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but we could talk about that for a long time.
Well, that's quite important. You were talking about these statistics, and a lot of people want to live their life with a mission, something that will empower, climate change, or empower themselves, or empower their life. Everybody's looking at something right now, and I know that you just talked about the stats on the importance of social mission to consumers and success. But is there something else that can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Mhm.
You talked about millennials. What about the other age groups?
Yeah, it's from what we can tell now that there's an across the board consumer awareness of what companies are doing and where they're spending their money. All of them are above 50% now. So 64% of consumers worldwide choose to actually switch or avoid a company that they don't have the same belief system in. That's a big number too. 64% of consumers are willing to pay more for products if they feel like you're in alignment on social and environmental projects. Those are pretty substantial issues that in all cases are really exciting. And on top of all of that, besides the fact that this obviously gives you some brand loyalty, some new customers, a way to talk to prospects, it is a wonderful way to add an enormous amount of content and communication with your audience and with your prospects, which is something that a lot of people are struggling with these days. Everybody's trying to figure out what content to bring out into the world now that we have a million social channels and lots of other things to worry about. This is a phenomenal way to make an impact and talk about something without selling all the time. I think
So,
it'll make a big difference.
no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I know that marketers are constantly struggling right now. There's so much data out there, but they don't know what to do with it. And there's so much information out there. And then you have, there's people that are passionate. There's people that are haters. There's so much going on. But
It's so
what
true.
steps can you take to align your goals with a meaningful social purpose?
I think the easiest thing to do is to do something that's already in your everyday life, or already something that you're involved in to some degree. If you really don't have something that you're already doing either in your life or in your business that's important to you, then it's time to start doing some research or start looking at what some other companies have been doing. You see stories like Tom's Shoes, who have been famous for decades for donating a pair of shoes for every pair they sell, for instance, or it'll come to me, Warby Parker, the eyeglass company. They do the same thing. They donate a pair of glasses for every one that they sell. You start looking at some of those sort of simple examples. They're hugely impactful, and they're, kind of simple for any company who's got something that they're doing out in the world to find a way to make a similar impact for those that are in need.
Those are really good points. A lot of companies are starting to do a lot of social impact, and people are starting to, brand with them and connect with them in a way that we've never known before. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So please don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're focusing on the profitable cause revolution, transforming businesses with purpose. Sabine, we were just talking about that before we went to commercial break. But what kind of impact can your social mission have on your business?
There's a pretty long list. So one of the things that, is probably one of the most interesting things that I've discovered is that your social mission can drive innovation and really inspire creative solutions for your company. Things like creative solutions around social and environmental challenges, for instance. We are entrepreneurs. This is what we do. Our entire world is about finding solutions to things. So applying that to our social mission in some form or another is really exciting. Imagine if everything that we did in the world had some level of social connection. So if somebody is producing soap and that soap is, there's a social mission attached to the soap, or it's milk or it's shoes or whatever it is, it gets to be pretty exciting, for all of us, frankly.
We're at a time right now where I think a lot of people are not thinking about giving back. They're not thinking about social consciousness. It's not their problem. Somebody else will fix it. What do you say to, this new generation or older generation, whoever it is, why should people give back, and why is this so important?
It's funny, I think of two different things when you ask that question. One is the why, which is everybody has to find their why. There's no question. This is something that it would be so much easier than relying on not-for-profits who are constantly fundraising, constantly having to find donations, or, it's a long, hard road. If all of us were helping in even the tiniest fraction, like less than 1%, it would make an enormous impact and it would ripple considerably further. The other thing to think about is we would end up modeling this across not just our sort of individual missions and see how deep and wide we can go with the impact, but we are modeling this also for our communities, for our employees, for our families and friends. And that too can have a pretty impactful ripple effect as well.
So, okay, let's take it to the next step now. How can your social mission empower your legacy? Because a lot of people are worried about their legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It wasn't something that I was thinking about a whole lot, but nowadays with a lot of things, sort of people struggling a little bit in a lot of different areas, the world struggling, it's important for us to think about, I think, at least to a small degree, how much of an impact we can make. And that legacy, for me anyway, would be far more interesting if that was the sort of impact that I left. If I was able to even fractionally make a difference with this pollination issue that we have, that is my personal mission, and the one that will take me through the rest of my life. I know that for sure. And everybody needs to feel the same way, I think, and discover what their legacy can be and what kind of impact they can have on all of those other people that I just mentioned. I think that's where it's going to get really, really deep.
And you know what? The thing about that is it's so empowering, and it doesn't really take that much out of you to give back.
It doesn't. And, and the other thing that we discovered was there's this wonderful way to think about this as more of an ecosystem, even in itself. So if we're generating business like we do every day anyway, and if we're able to have some small impact somewhere, or a large impact if you can afford it, another way to think about it is, how can you help make your mission self-sustainable too? I'll give you an example. in our world, we're taking this concept of investing 3% of every dollar into the bee sanctuaries. Well, my next goal is, how do I now make the bee sanctuaries self-sustaining? This is something that I've been working on at a really sort of interesting level as well. A wonderful byproduct of honeybees, of course, is honey. So even though we're all about the bees and the bee sanctuary and pollination, there's frankly this wonderful byproduct that could be its own revenue source to help fund more sanctuaries and save more bees. So that's the next part of our journey, is to figure out how to make that self-sustaining too. And I think a lot of people could start thinking about their own paths and their own legacies the same way.
So, okay, quickly, what's the future of the Hiveologie social mission? We have about 40 seconds before we go to break, but we can continue when we return.
Sure, yeah. This is our first sanctuary, and we're currently housing about 2 million, very happy, we hope, honeybees. But our goal is to branch out into more locations so that we can either ourselves build out more sanctuaries, or we can work with partners or teach other people how to do it. It's been quite a learning curve to figure out how to do this, and we've been very lucky to sort of get it to that step. But I'll tell you the rest of it when we come back, I'm sure.
Oh, well, no, I want to hear about it, because the last time I spoke to you, you only had 400,000. So I'm really excited to come back very, very quickly. So don't go away.
We'll do that.
Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're focusing on the profitable cause revolution, transforming businesses with purpose. And I'm joined by Sabine Steinbrecher, founder and chief hiveologist at Hiveologie Accelerated Learning. Now, before we went to break, Sabine was telling us that right now she's at 2 million bees, but the last time I spoke to you, it was 400,000, and you said your goal was to get to 1 million. How did that happen so quickly?
Yeah, it surprised us too. I've been learning a lot about how honeybees work. They are amazing little creatures. And frankly, we happen to pick a really great spot. They're in a really healthy area. There's nowhere near pesticides. There's like running spring water. There's all kinds of flowers for them to forage on. It's really kind of a fantastic spot, and it grew much more quickly than we expected. So we've been building out new hives and splitting hives and doing all this neat stuff and learning a ton. It's been really, really fascinating for us. And we're expecting to get to probably another 3, maybe up to 3 or 4 million by the time we have to move to another area, because there just won't be enough flowers for them all to live on, or to forage on. So we'll need to find another spot.
So in order for you to keep these colonies going, are you constantly replanting? Are you planting flowers? What are you doing to keep it going?
We didn't realize how much we needed to do, actually. So just last year, we planted about 3 acres of wildflowers. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. We're learning the farming side of this too. But this year we did the same thing again. We planted another 3 acres of a combination of different kinds of flowers that we researched pretty heavily to try to figure out which had the highest pollen and nectar counts to support as many bees as possible. So that was a really interesting research project, actually. And those have just been planted. So we'll see by summertime, when we need more blooms, that we found that we had a really great sort of spring and fall here, but we needed more flowers in the summertime. So that's what this has been designed to do. So I'm hoping what that means is the bees will be even happier, and they'll keep growing and having more baby bees, and we'll be able to split more hives.
This is so exciting. Like, how can anyone watching right now help? Like, what can people do?
As it relates to this topic alone, the most important thing people can do is understand where they're getting their honey from and support their local beekeepers, because a decent amount of the honey that's in grocery stores is either not honey at all or not great honey. Unfortunately, it's getting better and better, but just be careful when you're buying the honey that's in the little plastic bottle. Sometimes it's a lot of it could be blended. It could have corn syrup. It could have all kinds of stuff. So just be careful. Know where you're getting your honey from, and where possible, try to buy locally from your local beekeepers. There's lots of farmers markets everywhere. Even if you're a city person, you can usually find some somewhere. It's a little bit more expensive, but I got to tell you, honey is worth it. For this is a whole nother segment we'll do someday, but all the health benefits of raw honey and what it can do for you and all that good stuff. Unless you're vegan and you don't believe in honey in the first place, it's kind of fabulous stuff. It's really magical.
Well, my parents put it in their coffee every day. So
Yeah.
whenever they have their coffee in the morning, they always put honey in there. So we have less than a minute. How can you help others trying to define this for themselves or for their business?
I think probably the best thing that I could do in such a short amount of time is maybe what I'll do with you is I'll put together some resources and I'll leave them with you to post for some of the people that are interested in this kind of thing. But I would suggest that the best thing for them to do is start researching what other people are doing. It's almost always easier to model what somebody else is doing, at least when you get started in terms of sort of a model. But, look at things like the B Corp certification, or Imagine Canada has a certification as well. It's called the Caring Companies certification. There's 1% for the planet. There's a whole bunch of them. If you just Google any of those and look up alternatives, you'll get a pretty big list. I did that today and got like 15 of them. So we can do that. I can give you some of those resources too, and we'll make it a bit easier for them to at least get started if you like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Sabine. In 2017, Cheerios removed its mascot, Buzz the Bee, from the boxes of Honey Nut Cheerios. And they did this as a stark reminder that the world's population of bees is plummeting. And according to February 2023 statistics from the World Animal Foundation, 2.96 million honeybee colonies have disappeared from the effects of climate change, pesticides, and pollution. Now, today we heard Sabine's journey regarding the profitable cause revolution and the effects of giving back to Mother Nature. Climate change is real. We all need to do our part to help our earth, wildlife, and marine life. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.